So welcome back. I'm still reading The Hobbit, and we're in the middle of Bilbo, the dwarves, and the trolls. So the dwarves have all been captured by the trolls, and Bilbo's hiding behind a tree, and up comes Thorin, and he's wondering what's happening. "It's trolls," said Bilbo from behind a tree. They'd forgotten all about him. "They're hiding in the bushes with sacks." "Oh, are they?" said Thorin, and he jumped forward to the fire before they could leap on him. He caught up a big branch, all on fire at one end, and Bert got that end in his eye for his trouble before he could step aside. That put him out of the battle for a bit. Bilbo did his best. He caught hold of Tom's leg as well as he could. It was thick as a young tree trunk, but he was sent spinning up into the top of some bushes when Tom kicked the sparks up into Thorin's face. Tom got the branch in his teeth for that and lost one of his front teeth. It made him howl, I can tell you. But just at that moment, William came up behind and popped a sack right over Thorin's head, down to his toes. And so the fight ended. A nice pickle they were all in now, all neatly tied up in sacks with 3 angry trolls, and 2 with burns and bashes too, remember, sitting by them, arguing whether they should roast them slowly or mince them fine and boil them, or just sit on them one by one and squash them into a jelly. And Bilbo, up in a bush, with his clothes and his skin torn, not daring to move for fear they should hear him. It was just then that Gandalf came back, but no one saw him. The trolls had just decided to roast the dwarves now and eat them later. That was Bert's idea. And after a lot of argument, they had all agreed to it. "No good roasting them now, it'll take all night," said a voice. Bert thought it was William. "Don't start the argument all over again, Bill," he said, "or it will take all night." "Who's arguing?" said William, who thought it was Bert that had spoken. "You are," said Bert. "You're a liar," said William, and so the argument began all over again. In the end, they decided to mince them fine and boil them. So they got a great black pot and they took out their knives. "No good boiling them, we ain't got no water. And it's a long way to the well and all," said a voice. Bert and William thought it was Tom. "Shut up," said they, "or we'll never have done, and you can fetch the water yourself if you say any more." "Shut up yourself," said Tom, who thought it was William's voice. Who's arguing but you, I'd like to know?" "You're a booby," said William. "Booby yourself," said Tom. And so the argument began all over again and went on hotter than ever, until at last they decided to sit on the sats one by one and squash them and boil them next time. "Who shall we sit on first?" said the voice. "Better sit on the last fellow first," said Bert, whose eye had been damaged by Thorin. He thought Tom was talking. "Don't talk to yourself," said Tom, "but if you wants to sit on the last one, sit on him. Which one's he?" "The one with the yellow stockings," said Bert. "Nonsense, the one with the grey stockings," said a voice like William's. "I made sure it was yellow," said Bert. "Yellow it was," said William. "Then what did you say it was grey for?" said Bert. "I never did, Tom did." "That I never did," said Tom. "It was you. 2 to 1, so shut your mouth," said Bert. "Who are you talking to?" said William. "Now stop it," said Tom and Bert together. The night's getting on and dawn comes early. Let's get on with it." "Dawn take you all and be a stone to you," said a voice like William's. But it wasn't. For just at that moment the light came over the hill, and there was a mighty twitter in the branches. William never spoke, for he stood turned to stone as he stooped, and Bert and Tom were struck like roots as they looked at him. And there they stand to this day, all alone, unless the birds perch on them, for trolls, as you probably know, must be underground before dawn, or they go back to the stuff of the mountains they are made of and never move again. And that is what happened to Bert and Tom and William. And here's a picture. Bert and Tom and William turned to stone. Reminds me of a song. Excellent, said Gandalf as he stepped from behind a tree and helped Bilbo to climb down out of the thorn bush. Then Bilbo understood it was the wizard's voice that had kept the trolls bickering and quarrelling until the light came and made an end of them. The next thing was to untie the sacks and let out the dwarves. They were nearly suffocated and very annoyed. They had not at all enjoyed lying there, listening to the trolls making plans for roasting them and squashing them and mincing them. They had to hear Bilbo's account of what happened to him twice over before they were satisfied. Silly time to go practicing pinching and pocket picking, said Bomber, when what we wanted was fire and food. And that's just what you wouldn't have got with these fellows without a struggle in any case, said Gandalf. Anyway, you're wasting your time now. Don't you realize that the trolls must have a cave or a hole dug somewhere near to hide from the sun in? We must look into it. They searched about and soon found the marks of trolls' stony boots going away through the trees. They followed the tracks up to the hill until, hidden by bushes, they came on a big door of stone leading to a cave, but they couldn't open it, not though they pushed, while Gandalf tried various incantations. Will this be any good, said Bilbo when they were getting tired and angry. I found it on the ground where the trolls had their fight. He held out a largish key, though no doubt William had thought it very small and secret. It must have fallen out of his pocket, very luckily, before he was turned to stone. Why on earth didn't you mention it before? They cried. Gandalf grabbed it and fitted it into the keyhole. Then the stone door swung back with a big push, and they all went inside. There were bones on the floor, and a nasty smell was in the air, but there was a good deal of food jumbled carelessly on shelves and on the ground, among an untidy litter of plunder, of all sorts, from brass buttons to pots full of gold coins standing in a corner. There were lots of clothes, too, hanging on the wall, too small for trolls. I'm afraid they belonged to their victims. And among them were several swords of various makes, shapes, and sizes. Two caught their eyes particularly because of their beautiful scabbards and jewelled hilts. Gandalf and Thorin each took one of these, and Bilbo took a knife in a leather sheath. It would have only made a tiny pocket knife for a troll, but it was as good as a short sword for the hobbit. These look like good blades, said the wizard, half drawing them and looking at them curiously. They were not made by any troll, nor by any smith among men in these parts and days, but when we can read the runes on them we shall know more about them. Let's get out of this horrible smell, said Fili. So they carried out the pots of coin and food, as such was untouched, and looked fit to eat, also one barrel of ale, which was still full. By that time they felt like breakfast, and, being very hungry, they did not turn their noses up at what they'd got from the troll's larder. Their own provisions were very scanty. Now they had bread and cheese, and plenty of ale and bacon, to toast in the embers of the fire. After that they slept, for their night had been disturbed, and they did nothing more until afternoon. Then they brought up their ponies, and carried away the pots of gold, and buried them very secretly not far from the track by the river, putting a great many spells over them, just in case they ever had the chance to come back and recover them. When that was done, they all mounted once more and jogged again along the path towards the east. "Where did you go, if I may ask?" said Thorin to Gandalf as they rode ahead. "To look for you," he said. "And what brought you back in the nick of time?" "Looking behind," said he. "Exactly," said Thorin, "but could you be more plain?" "I went to spy on the road ahead. It'll soon become dangerous and difficult. Also, I was anxious about replenishing our small stock of provisions. I'd not gone very far, however, when I met a couple of friends of mine from Rivendell." "Where's that?" said Bilbo. "Don't interrupt," said Gandalf. "You will get there in a few days now, if we're lucky, and find out all about it. As I was saying, I met two of Elrond's people. They were hurrying along for fear of the trolls. It was they who told me that 3 of them had come down from the mountains and settled in the wood not far from the road. They'd frightened everyone away from the district, and they waylaid strangers. I immediately had a feeling that I was wanted back. Looking behind, I saw a fire in the distance and made for it. So now you know. Please be more careful next time, or we shall never get anywhere." "Thank you," said Thorin. Chapter 3: A Short Rest. They didn't sing or tell stories that day, even though the weather improved, nor the next day, nor the day after. They'd begun to feel that danger was not far away on either side. They camped under the stars, and their horses had more to eat than they had, for there was plenty of grass, but there was not much in their bags, even with what they'd got from the trolls. One morning they forded. You hear this quite a bit in these kind of stories about fording a river. It doesn't mean that they got into their grandpa's Ford pickup truck and drove across it. It means a ford in a river is a shallow part. Sometimes people put stones down so that you can walk across the river, even though the river is in full flood and flowing. So they put stones across the river so they can either hop or walk across. Fording a river. One morning they forded a river at a wide, shallow place, full of the noises of stones and foam. The far bank was steep and slippery. When they got to the top of it, leading their ponies, they saw that great mountains had marched down very near to them. Already they seemed only a day's easy journey from the feet of the nearest. Dark and drear it looked, though there were patches of sunlight on its brown sides, and behind its shoulders the tips of snow peaks gleamed. Excuse me while I try and turn the page. Page turning can be very arduous. "Is that the mountain?" asked Bilbo in a solemn voice, looking at it with round eyes. He'd never seen such a thing that looked so big before. "Of course not," said Balin. "That is only the beginning of the Misty Mountains, and we've got to get through or over or under those somehow before we come into the Wilderland beyond. And it is a deal of a way, even from the other side of them, to the lonely mountain in the east, where Smaug lies on our treasure." "Oh," said Bilbo, and just at that moment he felt more tired than he ever remembered feeling before. He was thinking once again of his comfortable chair before the fire in his favourite sitting room in his hobbit hole, and of the kettle singing. Not for the last time. Now Gandalf led the way. "We mustn't miss the road or we shall be done for," he said. "We need food for one thing, and rest in reasonable safety. Also, it is very necessary to tackle the Misty Mountains by the proper path, or else you will get lost in them, and have to come back and start at the beginning again, if you ever get back at all." They asked him where he was making for, and he answered, "You are come to the very edge of the wild, as some of you may know. Hidden somewhere ahead of us is the fair valley of Rivendell, where Elrond lives in the last homely house." Now, by homely house, they don't mean it's ugly. In England, when they say homely, they mean like home. So comfortable and easygoing and friendly. So homely. Over here in North America, if you say homely, it means just a little bit, I don't know, not very good looking. But Elrond doesn't live in a not very good looking house. Elrond lives in a very comfortable, friendly, welcoming house. The homely house. So as Gandalf was saying, "I sent a message by my friends and we are expected." That sounded nice and comforting, but they'd not got there yet, and it was not so easy as it sounds to find the last homely house west of the mountains. There seemed to be no trees and no valleys and no hills to break up the ground in front of them, only one vast slope, going slowly up and up to meet the feet of the nearest mountain. A wide land the colour of heather and crumbling rock, with patches and slashes of grass, green and moss green, showing where the water might be. Morning passed, afternoon came, but in all the silent waste there was no sign of any dwelling. They were growing anxious, for they saw now that the house might be hidden almost anywhere between them and the mountains. They came on unexpected valleys, narrow with steep sides, that opened suddenly at their feet, and they looked down with surprise to see trees below them and running water at the bottom. There were gullies that they could almost leap over, but very deep, with waterfalls in them. There were dark ravines that one could neither jump over nor climb into. There were bogs, some of them green, pleasant places to look at, with flowers growing bright and tall. But a pony that walked there with a pack on its back would never have come out again. It was indeed a much wider land from the ford to the mountains than you could ever have guessed. Bilbo was astonished. The only path was marked with white stones, some of which were small and others were half covered with moss or heather. Altogether, it was a very slow business following the track, even guided by Gandalf, who seemed to know his way pretty well. And we'll stop there for today. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed listening to Bilbo and the dwarves escaping from the trolls because of the wisdom and the wiles of Gandalf, who kept them fighting and arguing till dawn when they turned to stone. So, you have a good day, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye.